Alright, so previous video I was using the phone camera. Now I'm using the software, so it's going to be the second part, I guess. Um, so anyway, as I tell you guys, I was reading it. I said, I got to show you guys for yourself. So because again, I don't want you guys to take my word for it, right? I want you guys to go do the research yourself. But I'll provide the information on this right now, right? So Harry Bailey, an Australian doctor who briefly worked with Heath on his electrode studies, accused him of picking out African Americans to do his experiment because, as he puts it, it was cheaper to use niggas than cats. They were everywhere and cheap experimental animals. The patient would be wired up and given a little box and just went around pop, pop, pop all the time. Continuous orgasm. Okay? A woman called Claudia Mullen even testified before Congress in 1995 that Heath had, when she came to him as a child patient, engaged in all kind of unethical practices before handing her over to the custody of the CIA, where she was used as a sex slave. He has been accused of mind control, of barbarity, of Nazi science, and of using prisoners in charity. Jackson and elsewhere had his playthings. Okay, this is the article from Wired. The man who attempted to use pleasure conditioning to turn a gay man straight. And like I said, yes, it's still horrible. Yes, it's horrible. That's still horrible. It is horrible what he did, right? But what's even more terrifying is that he used a 12-year-old boy in his experiments to turn him to change his sexual preference from heterosexual and being attracted to the opposite sex to being attracted to the same sex. But they're not going to put that in the article, right? Okay, and I'm gonna show you how they play these games, right? How they play these games, how they lie. They don't tell you the truth. They omit the truth. I'm gonna tell you, and then they want to call you a liar. Okay, right? Now we know that there are different levels of lying, right? But they'll say, well, you know what, a lie is a lie. No, it's not. No, it's not. Okay. If I say to you, no, I didn't eat the cookie, but I did eat it, right? And then you say, no, I didn't experiment on children, but you did experiment on children. Let me ask you a question: are they the same? Yes, they are both lies, but tell me, are they the same? We know that there's different levels and different severities, right? Because of the outcomes of the lie, right? So this is their logic. So I want you to understand how these psychopaths and these narcissistic individuals think, right? The Machiavellian type personalities, right? So, like I said, you guys, it's a very, very interesting article, and this was from 2016. Okay, so you guys can read this. Now, I'm going to show you something else. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys another example of how they lie, right? And then, like I said, as a TI and as TIs understand this, that you may lie, but you're lying because of what they've done to you and the lies that's being told, right? So sometimes they try to put you into a trap or make you into a trap, right? And then they might put something in your head to try to get you to admit to, right? But again, because we know that this is technology that's being used to put things in your head so that you can confess to something that they basically created or planned or fictitious, whatever it may be, right? And they want you to confess to something that you didn't do, right? It's like false confession, right? And how they use coercion in order to obtain false confession from individuals, right? From people who they arrest and whatever, and want to charge them with crimes that they didn't commit, right? There's plenty of evidence for that, right? I mean, you can go research it yourself, right? So now, again, let's talk about lead poisoning, right? And this is not just in New York City, and this particularly happens to black people, particularly in poor and impoverished communities. Okay, so lead paint poisoning. And I've talked about this many times, right? But black people don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. A lot of in the 80s, right, when you had the explosion of kids that were put into special ed, right? Okay, the government didn't care. They blamed it on the parents. They said, okay, well, it's a birth defect or something. It's a learning disability. Blame it on the parents, right? They knew that they were lead paint in those public housing complex. They knew this. When Congress passed the law in 1976 or 78, something like that, with that ban lead paint in public housing, right? They removed all the lead paints in the neighborhoods that were predominantly white, right? The public housing that was neighborhood that predominantly white, and they left it in the black neighborhoods, in the neighborhoods that was predominantly black, right? This is, again, we as black people, we're too damn hard-headed. We're too, I use the word stupid, but I understand why. You know what I'm saying? But I still use it anyway. Okay? And it's because millions and millions of black people, and it's not just in the the public housing sector, but in the private housing sector as well. You had landlords who, were still using lead paint because it was cheap. Right? How much? And it wasn't that much cheaper than the other type base paints, right? Or they didn't repaint apartments for years, sometimes even a decade. Okay. So when you have children and paint is peeling, and children put paint in them, or even just breathing in the fumes in the summertime when it's hot and humid. Okay. So let me just, like I said, I'm anyway. All right. So lead paint poisoning, a health risk not limited to New York City Housing Authority. All right. What is this? Controversy involving. Oh, okay. Here it is. Okay. So. Here sent well, anyway, all right. Current controversy involving New York City Housing Authority development has placed lead paint poisoning back at the forefront of public attention. However, lead paint exposure is still a prevalent concern for young children living in any older home or apartment. While lead-based paint were banned for use over 35 years ago, lead paint that was used prior to that time was not removed. That has created a potential hazard for all older homes and apartments where lead paint continues to remain in the old residual paint that has been painted over numerous times. The exposure can occur by eating paint chips or by inhaling lead particles that become airborne. Children under the age of 6 years old are more susceptible to being poisoned because they tend to put up their hands or other objects into their mouth. Lead is also sweet, and this entices children to put it in their mouth. Although all children can be affected by lead poisoning, it is children living at or below the poverty line, okay, who live in older housing that is not being properly inspected and repairs, who are at greater risk. And what do we know about nitre, particularly in New York City, right? We know when we see all over the news, you see people living in apartments with holes, rats, right? Elevators not working, walls not painted, right? And when you look, particularly in the 80s, when you look at the amount of children that were diagnosed with they were called special ed students, the vast majority of those children were black, and they came from within the public housing sector. And I've talked about this many times, right? So I was trying to find the article that came out a couple of years ago that talked about this, when they said that first of all, they said it was like 600 to 900 children, right? And I said, well, how can it be 600 to 900 children? Okay, let me find that article, because I need to put this in a perspective that for you guys to really understand. Okay, so let me just find that article. Okay, I was looking for some of the original articles when this story broke, but apparently they've probably been scrubbed off the internet. So what they've done is that they've quietly updated, and this is not me saying this is a couple of articles I was reading. New York quietly update the number of children that tested positive for lead poisoning. At first they said from 6 to 900, I believe, between the ages of 4 and 7. Right? And I'm saying to myself, well, how can that be so low? Right? And on top of that, if the lead paint have been in these apartments for decades, we're talking about upwards of a couple 100,000, maybe even 1,000,000 people, and not just children but adults too, right, that have been poisoned by lead. So as I was saying, in the 80s with the special eds, a lot of these children came from the public housing sector, right? And do you know that 86% of children that are poisoned by lead paint and others, right, lead paint actually, are minority children. 86%. Okay, but like I said, yeah, you black people, yeah, you keep. Anyway, so this is the number that they have now, right? Which is, and this was in 2020. This article from the New York Times. 11,168 children tested positive for lead. The city didn't inspect their homes, right? But let me ask you a question. They have you running around targeting me and others, like I'm the threat, right? I'm the threat. I'm the threat to your kids. I'm the threat to your, the women. I'm a threat to the men also, right? Me, right? Okay. So, anyway, a new report highlights systemic failure slowing New York City from eradicating lead paint from its aging housing. Now, if 1978, 1976, what have you, when they passed a law saying that no more lead paint, why is it that we are in 2000, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, in 2010 to now, in the 2020s, that lead paint is still an issue? Okay. And you see what they won't do. Just like at the beginning, they lied. They said, okay, this is the estimate, this and that. And I'm going to share another article too, because this is not just happening in New York. It's also in Houston, in Texas, okay? And other places too, right? So, again, when they talk about black people, particularly the black people in America, living in the cities and in urban areas, what have you, and living in public housing, okay, then they say, well, okay, the way these children are acting is because their parents and such and such. Again, all bullshit. All bullshit. Some of it is true. I shouldn't say all, but some of it is the parents, right? But the parents who have been living in those buildings as children also have been affected by lead paint, right? They have been poisoned by lead paint. And we know what lead paint does to a person IQ, right? Person intelligence, okay? And that's what I always say to other black people. I say, sometimes when you see black people acting a certain way, don't get upset. Try to understand and try to put yourself in their position, right? Because we don't know what's happened to that individual. Okay. And again, we as black people, we don't look at these things with a realistic eyes, a realistic mindset. Okay, because we ignore a lot of the shit if we don't, we don't want to know it. We live in ignorance. Okay, and ignorance is not bliss. Okay, ignorance is damn right, stupid. Okay, so, all right. So as a lead paint crisis engulfed New York City public housing system last year, Mayor Bill de Blasio defended his administration by repeatedly pointing to data showing that the number of citywide children with high levels of lead in their blood was actually at historic low. How are you gonna equate over 10,000 children? Okay, and again, these are, let's look at the age group. See that here, they're not even giving you the age group now. Okay, they're just saying children. They're not giving you the age group. Okay, so that could be between the ages of 4 and 7, 4 and 8, 9, 4 and 10. What about the teenagers? What about those that are older than 10, who grew up in the same apartments, right? What about those? Okay, so on Thursday, however, the city comptroller issued a scathing report detailing how the city did not check for lead paint at 9,099 private residential buildings, where 11,168 children tested positive for high level of lead between 2013 and late 2018. Right? While the city Department of Health had compiled the children addresses, it never shared them with the housing department tasked with inspecting for lead. Now, why is that, black people? Why is that? Okay, you want to run around here doing this little psychological, while these these racist white motherfuckers on the police force, right, telling you this and that, such and such. You up in the church praying to God and this and that, all this bullshit, right? And look at your fucking community. Look at your fucking children. Like, this shit is pissing me off. Okay? Because I go outside, I get attacked every fucking day. Right? By my own goddamn people. Right? Who are downright stupid and ignorant. Okay? I want to believe what they want to believe. I want to hate me because I don't believe in their goddamn stupid ass religion and their stupid ass God given to them by the damn slave masters. Okay? But y'all not concerned with this shit. Right? You're not concerned that they're running psychological operation in your children, you know, making them bisexual and gay and all this bullshit. Excuse me, not bullshit, but making them bisexual and gay, right? Changing their sexual preference. And it would be fine if it happened naturally, but it's not happening naturally. Okay? It's happening through psychological manipulation and through the manipulation of the food, the chemicals within the food, the drugs. But we don't want to take it seriously. Right? Because they're set the narrative and we follow like little damn dogs. Right? We're looking up at them like, you know, hungry. That's how y'all look. Stupid. Right? Meanwhile, millions of your children, and I say millions because it is millions, right? They ain't gonna want to give you the real number. They're not gonna do that. They don't want to give you the real number. Okay? So anyway, let me continue. Any lead poisoning of our children must be treated as 5-alarm fire. Really? Really? So they hide the information, right? And somebody must have been like, yo, this is not right. I can't keep quiet to this shit. Right? So, any lead poisoning of our children must be treated as a 5-alarm fire. But the city isn't utilizing basic tools at its disposal to distinguish the fires. So you see how they speak, but their action shows you different. And this is what I want black people to understand. We love to hear what they have to say. We love that feel good saying. We love that, oh, you know, I got my hot sauce, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I love my watermelon too. You know, coon shit that y'all want to fucking get all happy about. Right? Meanwhile, this shit is going on. And you believe in what they say. Oh, it's the parents, and you know they were born that way, right? When we talk about environmental warfare against us as a people, this is what we're talking about. Chemical warfare. This is what we're talking about. When they know what lead poison would do to the human being, to the human body, to the human mind, and they left that shit in the apartments, in the public housing, where the majority of black people live. Anyway, even though the New York City Housing Authority has been scrutinized for lying, okay, now I didn't say that, you guys see it right there, about failed lead paint inspection and endangering the health of thousands of children in public housing, is not just children also. But you have kids who are now adults, right? Who have been poisoned by lead and who have living life in the most difficult situations, and no one is even saying, okay, you know what, let's go back to the 80s, right? Let's go back, let's look at these people who are, because they keep records, right, who were in special ed classes, who been damaged by this. Ask for people to come forward. You want to know why they're not doing it? Because they don't want to pay any reparations to those victims. And I should tell you about America. If they don't want to pay reparations to the descendants of ADOS, the American descendants of slavery, right? They don't want to pay reparations to them. Imagine, they don't even want to pay reparations to the citizens of Clinton, Michigan. Like, how stupid are we as a people? Alright, so, and while the number of young children exposed to lead citywide has gone down by 90% since 2005, says who? Says who? You can't believe a word these people are saying, because they'll put some truth in it with the lies. Okay? Children who live in private houses in New York City continue to test positive for lead at higher rates than those in public housing. Look at that shit, right? So even when you're in the private housing sector, right, you are more exposed to lead paint than anything else. So if that's the case, the majority of us as children who grew up in these apartment buildings in the 80s, the 90s, you know, we've all have been damaged, right, by this. Some more severe than others. Okay? I mean, this shit is ridiculous. Let me... Okay. So here's another article from 2019, right? City failed to remove lead poisoned kids from toxic nitro apartments. So this is the public housing sector now, right? So city inspector uncover conclusive evidence of lead paint in 34 public housing apartments where lead poisoned children were living, but the city failed to force repairs or move the kids out, the Post has learned. Okay, so let me see. All of a sudden now they care about your kids, right? When they want to slander me and say all these things about me, because again, I'm trying to expose the non-consensual experimentation that has been done to me and others like me for over the past 2 decades or more, right? Okay, but they don't want to protect your children or the women or the men or anybody else, right? Okay, from what the shit that they're really doing. Okay, they don't want to do that, right? Because see, I know how this game works. Okay, when they want to silence someone, how they try to use some of the worst propaganda, slander that they can use, right? Or they try to manipulate the individual, set them up, drug them, do whatever they can, okay, in order to silence them from exposing non-consensual experimentation being done. See, this is what the government has done, right, in order to try to get away with the continued experimentations of human beings. Okay, so they'll spread their rumors and have these idiots out there, these black idiots, these Negropeans, as I call them, you know, stalking and carrying on like fools, right? Meanwhile, they're not concerned with stuff like this. That's to tell you how ass backwards they have us thinking, okay, and believing. All right. So instead, the health department allowed the New York City Housing Authority to appeal the findings. Okay, so even when the truth is put out there, guess what? They say, fuck that. Nah, no. We're gonna let them still live in there, because what black people don't understand, this is warfare. This is white supremacy warfare. So if you don't want to believe that you're in a fucking war with white supremacy, then you're a dumbass. Okay, and I'm getting angry. And anybody reading these articles should be angry as I am angry. And if you're not angry, then it just shows you how successful white supremacists and white supremacy have done in conditioning you into this passive state that we as black people are in. Okay? So the health department, okay? The fucking health department, all right? Allowed the New York City Housing Authority to appeal again. I gotta pause this. Okay, I just gotta get my composure. Okay, so the health department allowed the New York City Housing Authority to appeal the findings, leaving dozens of kids, and it's not dozens, it's thousands of kids. Okay, don't believe this bullshit about dozen. Okay, leaving dozens of kids in the tainted apartment and potentially exposing them to further harm for years, official records reveal. The 34 apartments were the most contaminated of 91, where lead initially was found between 2010 and 2017, after pediatricians reported that one or more children living there tested positive for elevated levels of lead in their blood. But NYCHA was able to appeal 88 of the cases due to the testing method that was used, and the health department officials sided with NYCHA in 83 of those cases, overruling their own inspectors. Okay? As a result, likely lead paint was left in all but 5 of the apartments, the record shows. It seemed especially heinous that the agency that is supposed to be protecting children finds out that children are lead paint poisoned, find the apartment has lead, and then allow the landlord, a public landlord, to get away with not abating the lead, said legal aid lawyer Judith Goldiner, who has repeatedly filed suit over NYCHA's standard living conditions. Okay? And it's not just in New York City. You will find this all over America. Okay? The reason why they do this is to take away the intelligence of our children, of us. Okay, as black people, of us. Okay? And it is so infuriating, and we walk around like if nothing is happening to us, that this and that and such and such. We talk about police killing on black people, that's important to what have you, and we ignore shit like this. Okay, this is the reason why our children have problems learning. Okay, I mean, this shit is ridiculous, right? So this is the Houston Health and Human Services, right? To use $3 million to eliminate lead-based paint hazard in Houston home. Okay, now they're not talking about reparation to these children and adults, children, teenagers, and adults. Okay, so the reason why they want to minimize it to children, right, is to reduce the numbers, right? And they're not, you notice how they're not given the age range. Well, I think this one does, right? This one does. Okay? Partially, right? But again, they don't want to include teenagers and adults, because again, that number would skyrocket. And trust me, we're talking about trillions of dollars in settlements. Okay? So, Houston, a new federal grant will enable the Houston Department of Health and Human Services to make 2,000 inner city homes safe from lead-based paint and help risk the young developing children. The HHS received today $3 million grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development (HUD), matching the city bond funds from the City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department will bring the total project value up to $3.9 million. Okay, so let's see. We talk about here. Let's see. All right, confirmation. Homes of family with lead poisoned children will receive, prior to the lead hazard remediation, every year nearly 300 Houston children under the age of 6 are confirmed with elevated blood lead levels. The figure could be higher, as only about 20% of Houston 210,474 children were screened for lead poisoning. And like I said, this is all over America, okay? And we walk around here as if these things are not happening. They got us so conditioned, right? So conditioned, man. You know, I am going to fucking scream. I'm going to end this video, seriously. All right, I will talk to you guys in the next video, because this is some bullshit. Okay, and the thing that what I go through, how they have these teenagers engaging in psychological warfare against me, women, right? Then the white police will show up to let me know, yeah, I'm controlling these puppets, right? I've turned them against you, right? Well, like I said, I've said it many times. You know, when the Emperor of Rome wanted to keep the people from understanding and realizing their oppression, their pain, their suffering, what does he do? He builds them a coliseum. He gives them games. Okay? And for a lot of these idiots out there, they think that this is a game. Okay? Meanwhile, your children are being poisoned. You're being poisoned. We all are being poisoned. So congratulations, dumbasses.